podcasts.
Cool. Who's going to say something funny to start off the podcast?
Welcome to the podcast. It's Games Explained, where we talk about games and talk about sea spiders. We're your hosts,
Dan.
Ben.
and Matt. So the format of the show is that we'll talk about games that we've been playing lately that have been interesting to us, and then we'll talk about a topic, which will be revealed later. But if you want a spoiler, you can read the title of the podcast.
But don't tell your friends because they don't like spoilers.
Yeah, if you're listening into in the car and you just hit play for your friends, don't tell them. They have to wait.
Yeah, respect.
Carpool.
Definitely.
So Ben, do you want to start us off? What have you been playing lately? What's been tickling your game brain?
Sure. This is a game that I've been playing kind of on and off for a number of years. It's a game called Set. This is a game it's sort of like an advanced version of the matching game that you may have played as a kid. You put down a number of cards. I believe it's 12 cards on the table at a time, and then you have to find sets of cards that are that make a set. How you do that is you look at the 4 different properties on the card. There's the count of the shapes on the card. There's the shape on the card. There's the color on the card, and there's the fill of the shape on the card. So it's those 4 properties, and within each of those properties, you have to check to see if all 3 cards have the same thing, or that they're all unique. And it's kind of a hard game to sort of explain that way. Like, that's basically the full rules. When you see a set, you say set, and you grab all of the cards, and everyone else can confirm that it's correct, and then you see how many sets you can get. And typically you have to play just a few rounds, and then you kind of get an idea of what a set looks like. And it's a game that, often when I play it, it's kind of a filler game between other games we play, because, someone can be, preparing some food at a game day and just kind of step in and say, oh yeah, there's a set, and they can grab one and they can walk away again. It can also be a really competitive game where people are just like yelling constantly and slapping the table. So it can be played in kind of a variety of ways, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so like I'm familiar with the game. So like some of the images are like a solid purple pill-looking shape, or there will be 2 green diamonds with lines in them, or something like that. And those are the types of things that you're looking at. And it definitely takes some time to see what a set looks like in front of you before you actually do things. But you can get like really good at it once you...
Yeah, it takes a little while to train your brain. You have to watch some other people claim some sets for a while and just be like, okay, I see why this one was, or why this one that I chose wasn't a set. Like, you can rule it. It's easier to kind of say, like, I think this is one, what makes it not a set, and see what breaks it, and then you kind of learn that way and get it figured out. Yeah.
In my mind, set has its own subculture where it's like, how would I describe it? Math-minded folks.
It definitely has that sort of audience in mind, I think.
Do you remember the first time we played set?
Yeah, that was definitely at a math conference over our lunch break with
High
a bunch
school
of other
math conference.
Yeah.
And then later in Budapest with a bunch of international engineers, and everyone knew set and everyone loved set.
Really?
I don't know. No one knows set except for my nerds.
Yeah, it is definitely a pretty nerdy game.
Oh, I love it. Oh.
Whenever I play it, it's just a reminder of how inferior my brain is. I like look at these things, and it like the last time I played, I remember sitting there and staring with a group of 4 people for like 5 minutes at the same row of cards. Like, is there really nothing here, or are we just that unobservant? Like, yeah,
there are definitely times, like every once in a while, there's a time when there's no set on the board with 12 cards, and you add an extra row. But it seems like more often than not, you stare at the cards for like 3 minutes. You're like, okay, there's definitely there's one.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right when you've lost hope.
Yeah, exactly.
Or some passersby shows up and is like, oh, here's a set. And you're like, we all hate you. We've been spending so long.
Yeah, it definitely has that kind of love-hate feel to it sometimes.
It's a good game. So
Yeah.
set, eh?
Yeah.
You can find it in your local board games, card game store.
Yeah, definitely look at in the card game section. It's usually in a pretty small box.
Shout out local card game store.
Shout out.
What about you guys? What games do you have in mind?
I'll talk about a game. So here's an old game. It's called Scotland Yard. It's old because it has like all sorts of different editions. They're exactly the same. They just look different.
I know it's old because I'm looking at your box and it has masking tape all over the side of it.
It does. Scotland Yard is a unique game in that it's one person versus everyone else. So what you have is a map of London, and it shows where taxis can go, where buses can go, and where the metro can go. And you have different tickets. You have a limited number at the start of the game. And Mr. X, or Dr. X, if you want to be gender neutral, which we do, has also a limited number of tokens. And you have to hunt down Dr. X, only seeing where they show up every 5 moves or something. So you, as the rest of the people, have to swarm this person, knowing what form of transportation they used, but not knowing which direction they took. So it's a bit of deduction. It's a bit of a logic puzzle, because you can say, oh, he showed up here, and then he took a taxi, and a bus. Okay, if I was there, I would take these 2 taxis, but no, there's no bus stop there, and so you backtrack. And so you can sort of reason out where they should be and try to pin your opponent. And for the person who is playing Dr. X, it's very nerve-wracking because you're just staring at the board and the people around you are like, oh, I bet he's here. I'm going to go right there. And you're like, I know it's there. Don't go there. No, stop. Don't do that. Very, very fun. Oh, I love it. So it's kind of a hidden traitor game, but you know who the traitor is. You just can't say anything.
Yeah. You got to keep a poker face, and like everyone knows who Dr. X is. Like who the
oh,
player.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's not like you're hidden amongst the other players like some other games. Okay.
Yeah. What's Dr. X's objective, sorry?
To stay alive until 25 turns or something.
Okay, so there's no like...
Just outlast.
There's no
destination.
Yeah,
No.
Okay. All right.
You just gotta let them get tired. Scotland Yard only has a certain amount of bus tickets.
Finite resources.
Don't think too hard about the fiction of the game. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's very fun. Very fun.
Very cool.
Nice.
So it's semi-cooperative, which is very fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. So I recently played the farming game.
Wait. I've heard that mentioned so many times
Really?
in my life, and I don't know anything about it.
I feel like we played a modified version of it in high school, like in a class.
That sounds right. It's definitely...
is that a local game?
I don't...
Is that
no,
regional?
It's regional to the States somewhere.
Oh.
and also not the States, I guess, because I have a copy, but it's definitely branded as edutainment on the box. But it was definitely a like $2 thrift store find that we unbundled recently and played through from 1976, if I'm not mistaken.
Nice.
And and it's a like board game style game in that I say that in that like like the Monopoly style go around roll
like
your
roll
dice and go
around.
around the outside of the board and you just move the number of spaces that you roll, and each of the 4 sides of the board is a season, and in that season are random spaces that have things to do with that season in farming. So in springtime you're like, or in winter you're resting and you're like preparing for what you're going to do in spring, and you can get some early harvests in spring, and certain crops yield better than others. And it's a game that has not aged well.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
It's definitely like there's random piles for getting options to buy. So randomly you'll draw from this pile and it's like you can buy a tractor for $10,000, or you can purchase this plot of land for this much. I don't have control over like whether or not I can actually buy that unless I draw it randomly from this pile. And
it's kind of like Kijiji.
Yeah.
Like the TV
please show
shows
up.
up and you're like,
I really want this harvester to show up this year, please. And then when it comes time to harvest, then there's like a chart that you have of like you have this many bundles of hay or this many acres of hay, and if you roll this dice, then you yield this much money. And so then it's also random. I roll the dice and hope that I get this much, and then you put your investments back into more farming and whatever. So it took Rachel and I like many sessions of about an hour or two to finish one game.
Oh, wow. Brutal.
Because the end goal is have $250,000 in assets.
okay, all
at
right.
some point. So it's sort of an arbitrary number to pick. It's just like whatever. But we stuck it out, and
I'm impressed.
yeah, I mean it's a nice little sit down and not think too hard and be able to socialize still, whatever.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds like it's kind of ruled by the dice, not so much by strategy.
Yeah, and it's got these little vinyl, like little tiny stamp looking things for your acres of land, and then you take it, you peel it off this board and stick it on your little section of the board in the middle, and it's like because it's vinyl, it just like it sticks itself to the board.
Like flannel graph?
Yeah, it just like stays there. So it's a weird concept, but I don't know. It was fun to play the one time, and now we have a board game on our shelf.
It's like the board game equivalent of like the movie The 10 Commandments, where you're like, I watched it. That's a little piece of culture I got.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's no taking that time back.
One day I'll watch that film.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
Yeah, me neither.
So our main topic of the day is board games for people who don't play board games. So we've all kind of been in that situation. You like board games, you're listening to this podcast. Unless you're unwillingly being forced to listen to this podcast.
You're the person in that carpool.
You're in that if you're the person in the carpool, I apologize. We're very nice, just stick with us. So you're in this situation where you have a whole bunch of people that you want to love games because you love games, and you pull out Small World and then open the rule book, and then everyone's face just drops and they pull out their phone. When memes rule your life and board games don't, it's a sad day. It's a sad day.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk a bit about games that we have introduced that people who don't play games often or have never played games, we found that they pick these games up rather quickly for different reasons, and everyone's able to have a good time. Yeah. Now, it's still up to you to get the person to sit down and be willing to try a game. But maybe that game being listed in a cool podcast about games that are nice to play can just help out you in the carpool.
Hey, Hope.
Yep. Yeah, so one game that I've found has been kind of nice for people that don't play a lot of games, or at least don't play a lot of these modern games that kind of seem a lot more complicated. These games can kind of be full of a lot of rules or a lot of competition, and that's kind of intimidating for a lot of people. So games, we've talked about versions of this game the past couple of podcasts already, but Pandemic.
Like Pandemic Legacy?
Very similar, yes. But I'm talking about the original Pandemic. In that game, it's a co-op game. Everybody is on the same team playing together against the board. And so you don't have that intimidation of like, oh, I don't understand this rule, so I'm at a disadvantage, because you're with everyone else that knows the rules. And you aren't trying to compete against these other people that have tons of experience because they're part of your team and you can work together on the goals. The challenge there is for these new people that are intimidated by games, you have to make sure that you still give them enough agency and you don't just do their turns for them. But as long as you're open to discussing things clearly with them, it can be a good opener for these more complex actions in games.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about Pandemic and the cooperative games, and my experience starting with Pandemic was that I was very passive and like just watch, like the game was happening to me. So you definitely, if you are the one introducing a cooperative game to somebody, you totally have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, there's a giant asterisk there.
I think though too, what you said is that like it can be more of maybe a bridge to the more complicated games, because Pandemic is not a mechanics light game,
Right.
So like if you're gonna dive into the deep end, so to speak, then better to do it where you're all on the same side rather than competing against each other.
And if you want a game like Pandemic, but even more light on the rules, Forbidden Island is the one. It's almost a 1-to-1 mapping, just with fewer rules, and it's on a grid, which makes things easier, and there's always something useful to do right near you. I would recommend Forbidden Island as well. Yeah.
Cool. I'll have to check it out.
I think that secret identity games are often really good, because I feel like a lot of people have played some version of Mafia already, like, you know, as a time killer in high school or something else like that. So people are familiar with the concept. And then you're relying more on, say, your own ability to handle yourself in a social interaction, like keep a poker face or whatever, and not have to worry about a bunch of rules. Because I think rules is one of the most difficult things when you're bringing people into games.
Yeah, for sure.
So like Saboteur is one that is super simple. The rules are just pick a card and play a card, and usually playing a card means add to this path, like orient this card to fit into this path. And then the one variable is, are you trying to get to the end of the tunnel and get the gold, or are you trying to keep other people from doing it? And then you don't tell anyone else.
Yeah. And the funny thing there too is if people are bad at games, then they are more convincing as a hidden character.
yeah. It's true. They're the wild card. I find that, like, I recently played a game that I thought would be good for introductory players into board games, which is called Killer Bunnies. I don't know if you guys have heard of it.
Oh, yeah, I've played it once.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's a silly game, and you don't really have to take yourself seriously. It's just like whatever. Like, anything can happen. You could lose everything in a turn, or you know, you could suddenly go from last place to first place. It's one of those games where it's just sort of like you don't take yourself seriously, you just play. But there's so many like edge cases and weird things about the rules that like the people who are new to the game, who felt like they were starting to come to grips with what the rules were, and then suddenly they play a card and it's like, well, actually you can't play the card in this situation because of this mechanic, and then they just feel like deflated, like, I had a plan, why can't I do this plan, you know?
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, just finding things where the rules are very much on the light side, and where you can where you can cover all of the cases right away, so that nobody has any doubts as to what they're capable of doing, and not feeling let down when they have this big thing that they had planned and then it didn't work out.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of we didn't playtest this at all. It's one of the games we pull out for groups that aren't super into games. It's one, like, we just did a video of this for April Fools, and you know, the rules literally are just you draw a card, you play a card, and you do what the card says. And all of the rules are all of the, like, the small rules are written directly on the card. They're very easy to understand. It's a very like comedic game. The games last, you know, a minute to 5 minutes. They're very quick. So if someone wants to, you know, play around and like, okay, this isn't for me or whatever, they can get out quickly or jump in quickly. You know, if you're doing this at the beginning of a game session or just while you're waiting for an event. Like, we were at a wedding once, and just between the ceremony and reception, we just pulled this game out and filled some time, and it was great. The one challenge we found with it is some people just don't get it. They don't get that it's just a quick, funny little game, and they think that there's more strategy to it than there is.
Oh yeah.
And so they get confused by that, which is, I found that really interesting. A couple people that had that issue. But that's a different problem, I guess.
Yeah. They just need to play a couple of rounds and then see, like, oh yeah, I can literally win on the first card played if I have the right card.
Yep, definitely.
In this game.
Is there a you win card?
Yep.
There's,
I think there might
What?
be like a stipulation of like if there's 7 people playing, then you win or something. Like
Oh, okay.
But,
Yeah.
otherwise, it's you do this other thing. But there's definitely a card titled "You Win."
That's so funny.
yep.
Oh, I'm going to talk about a game. So there's a game. It's called No Thanks. It's a tiny box. It's got cards numbered 3 to 30 and a bunch of chips. And it's the simplest game, and you can teach it in a minute. Though we should test this out with a video maybe sometime, eh? No thanks.
Yeah.
It's a good game. It's been a big success with every age group I've tried it with. So the whole game is there's a deck of cards face down on the table. You flip a card over. If it's a card you want, you take it and then flip another one. If it's a card you don't want, you put a token on it. And then it's up to the next person. So now there's a card with a token on it in front of them. If they take the card, they get the token, which is nice. And if they don't want it, they add a token. So this card keeps getting sweetened by tokens until it's worth it enough for someone to take it.
Gotcha.
So you don't want points. So a card says 10 on it, that's 10 points. You don't want 10 points. And each token, that's losing a point.
Gotcha. Okay, so the tokens essentially drop the number on the card by 1.
Yeah. So I've had it where a card is worth 0 because there's the same number of tokens on it as the card itself. And then it gets to you and you're like, well, yeah, I'm going to take this. Because when you run out of tokens, you just have to take whatever comes next.
Oh, yeah.
So tokens they're anti-points, but they're also power.
Right.
And then 2 more rules. One is if your cards are a run of 2 or more in a row, all the cards above the first one don't count for anything.
Nice.
Just the lowest one in each run counts. So
I
now,
see.
if I have an 11, a 12 is free for me, so I can just take it and get whatever tokens on it.
Yeah.
But for you, it still costs 12.
Is there just one of each number in the deck?
Yep. And the last twist is that 9 cards are randomly removed before you play.
Oh, so you don't know if you got a run or not.
Exactly. Because or else you could just take every single card
Yeah.
and then have all the tokens and 3 points.
Yeah. What's good about that, removing cards, is that it smushes the skill ceiling and skill floor such that like you can't card count.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've played this game 400 times, whether you want to or not, you get to know what the good moves are and what cards you should be picking and what you should be passing.
Mm-hmm.
But not knowing what could be in the run or whatever makes it so that the next person who's never played the game maybe isn't more likely to win than you, but actually
Have a
has
better
a fighting
chance,
chance.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And all the cards are face up once they're drawn, so everyone has the same amount of information. It's not a memory game. Really
Nice.
fun.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's a favorite. So we
Nice.
talked about cooperative games. We've talked about simple games. I'm going to talk about one more type of game, which is trivia games. So there's one trivia game which I have found myself enjoying very much, and it is called Wits and Wagers. I'm a huge fan.
Mm-hmm.
So normal trivia games, there's a question, and then everybody tries to figure out what the answer is, and then if someone gets it right, they get points.
Yeah, those are never really interesting for me.
Yeah, because you'll have one person that is an encyclopedia,
Right.
and they love those games, but it's a bit limiting. This game instead, everyone secretly writes down an answer, which are all numbers. They put it face down, and then you order those numbers on the table, and you bid on which of the numbers you think is the correct answer.
Right. So you could be betting on the person who is that encyclopedia and still doing well.
Exactly. You can all bet on Mr. Encyclopedia. And
Right.
he'll probably be wrong sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And then you get to laugh.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, you don't have to bid on your own. Like if you're not confident on the answer, you just write something hopefully closest to it, and then you see everybody else's when you reveal your card, and it's like, oh, everybody's getting really close to this number. Maybe I should pick that and not the one that I'm super not confident about that I wrote.
Mm-hmm. And how the scoring works is the multiplier for your bet is 2 when it's right in the middle of the board. So if it was the median answer, then it's the least benefit, but it can go up to like a 5 times multiplier if it's a big outlier. So
Right.
betting what's in like the center of the answers is less risk, less reward. And so it balances out that way too.
Nice.
Yeah.
And like, how does it work again? There's like 7 rounds.
7 rounds.
And by the end of 7 rounds, now what's good about it is it, correct me if I'm wrong, but like in the last round you can bid on your earnings that you've made and then try and win.
You always have 2 tokens that are never taken from you.
Yeah.
So there's no risk. You just put those on, but
Yeah.
you can sweeten them with your earnings anytime.
Throughout the whole game.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So then, like, if you're in last place and you need to make your last ditch effort in the last round, then you just add all the chips that you've won underneath your other chips, and
Yeah, often what happens in this game, which is a playing field leveler at the end, is someone has the most tokens and they put them all on something. And immediately what happens then is anyone can win.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they chose wrong, that means you just have to pick the right one and you'll win.
mm-hmm.
And so there's like this bidding war and someone goes all in and then it's anybody's game. And that's wonderful.
Very cool. Yeah, it's definitely a much more approachable trivia game.
I love it. So here's the question. What game do you wish did exist that would help you get your friends into board games? Like, can you imagine a game if only this game existed, I could get my friends to play board games and they'd have a great time?
I think friends and family is an important clarifier, because I find a lot of the time it's, we're at a family event, like we're at the lake or something, and we want to play a game, but maybe the parents aren't super into the newfangled fancy rule games and stuff. So
Darn parents.
You pull out your miniatures and they just walk away.
Yep, exactly.
I wish, and this may exist, that there was a pop culture game that just hit the current things people were into, like a Marvel game that had really simple rules, or something that the fiction of it was enough for people to say, I would try a board game because I love Harry Potter or whatever it was. But it is simple enough rules that you can just jump in.
Yeah. Yeah, usually games like that end up becoming complex because the creators want to like value the fiction of a character, and it's like they need to make all these complicated statistics to like, well, Spider-Man's a little bit less strong than Venom, but he's a little bit more spry, so
and he shoots 12 types of webs, so we have to have them.
Right. But yeah, to make that simple. Now I have I haven't played it yet, but I have a CFL board game. So, if people are into the Canadian Football League, then they can play a board game about it. I have no idea how complex it is. But
That's definitely what I need to video about. Yeah.
I only have
to play
questions.
that for the next time.
I want to know. Do you pick plays?
I think you pick plays, and then based on the play that you pick and the play that your opponents pick, you have a better chance of succeeding at your play when you like roll dice against each other.
Oh,
something like that.
Huh.
So there's like, I don't know, like if people are into,
the sports crowd is definitely a different group to appeal to.
They're interested in the people who call the shots, and that's what that is, right? Like, I think this play is what's needed for this situation.
They should have an NFL drafting game so that you could have your, like, what do they call it? Fake mystery league? What do they call it?
Fantasy? It's one single word. But Fake Mystery League has a much better ring to it, I think.
But a board game version of that, where you like draft players from a specific year, and they'll do better or not, and
something like that probably exists, and somebody's really into it.
I'm sure. Oh yeah,
but that somebody's probably not me.
Maybe I should broaden my game collection and just buy all those DVD trivia ones from the thrift store.
There's a reason that those ones specifically are in the thrift store. Like those games that you play with your DVD remote.
Oh yeah. That's good stuff. Can we talk about how clever that is, though, as a game design?
I mean,
it is a unique mechanic to abuse the DVD system.
It's just a. They said someone popped in a DVD and went through the menus and was like, "This could
is so
be a
fun.
game."
I want to do this all the time.
let's just say necessity is the mother of invention.
I love it. I'm into it.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there any other games you wish existed? Is there a niche you wish would be hit? Is there a style? Is there a game of old that you wish just had simpler rules so you could get your friends into it? I've often wished for a Dungeons and Dragons variant that was numbers light.
Yeah, definitely. There are different tabletop role-playing games than Dungeons and Dragons, like now that I have to say them, I can't think of any of them.
Does Pathfinder? I've heard of Pathfinder.
Pathfinder is like a revised version of 3rd edition, I think, because they didn't like how 4th edition came out.
Oh,
so it's more or less a different type of Dungeons and Dragons. It's still just as
it's very similar. Yeah.
Okay.
Fates, I think, is what you're thinking
Yes.
of.
Yeah.
It's all you have is 2 6-sided dice for everything.
Ooh.
And you don't roll like a bunch of different stats-based things. You just like you have a +1 because you did something cool, or you have a -1 because you're in a tough situation or something. Like it's very simple in the numbers.
I have one that I bought that is a tiny 4-inch by 4-inch piece of cardboard, and the players play with a deck of cards each, and based on what you flip is what happens, which is fascinating because there's an ace in there, and there's a joker in there, and you don't know when they're going to happen. And so if it hasn't happened yet, you're like, my odds of something terrible happening are going up and up. But I didn't like the rules very much, so I made my own variant, and I haven't played it yet.
Oh, that's great. You have to make a video about that one.
Oh, can I?
Yes, please.
This is my own system. It's called Matt's Deck of Cards.
It's
a Western experience. There we go. Got it back. It was Western themed, by the way.
there we go.
I didn't just throw that in.
Like, we live in the western part of the world, I guess. That's what you're referring to.
Well, thanks for tuning in. Today we talked about some of our favorite games. We talked about getting people into games that aren't into games, and games we wished existed. So if you're a game designer out there, thanks for tuning in, and please make those games now. Tune in next time when we talk about boots and games. Games and boots. Word Games Explained, and we'll see you next time.